All right, and welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A, where we are taking a fundamental approach to fitness to simplify diet and exercise to give you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly. Today's episode is sponsored by the RDP Library, with my best-selling book included of micro workouts, grind-style calisthenics, bodyweight training for martial arts, and more. Link is down below in the description. Thank you very much for your support. And speaking of books, I finally have started to get more solid on how I'm going to write, not my next book, or not the book after that, but the three deep here on the basic approach. What is a fundamental approach to fitness, which is basically my attempt to rewrite how we understand and know how fitness works as a whole. And so a lot of times when I'm gathering research and I'm putting together information and stuff, I'll often test out these ideas here on my podcast, just so I can hear myself saying the words, the ideas, how people are responding to them. Do they make sense? Do they not make sense? So congratulations, you guys are my guinea pigs. And usually when I'm writing books, especially something of this nature, it's a multi-year process. I've tried starting to write this book many times over the last couple of years, and it just hasn't petered out, which usually is a sign that I don't understand the material well enough to present it. So I think I'm finally getting down into the drudges of how this is supposed to fan out. And so for the next several episodes, I'm going to basically be giving you all of the information I have thus far in the outline of the book on how it's going to pan out. And we'll have some fun with it and see where it goes. So we start off, as the title of this podcast kind of implies, with the idea that everything we know about fitness and diet and exercise is wrong-ish to a degree. I can't really make that statement. Of course, we know a lot of good things and a lot of accurate information, but I propose that our whole approach to, if we want to lose weight, build muscle, get stronger, whatever it is fundamentally flawed. And when we have a fundamentally flawed approach to something, everything we learn from that point on is basically kind of like off kilter. It's kind of like building the Leaning Tower of Pisa with a crooked foundation. It doesn't matter how sound your construction is. If the foundation is a little bit off, everything you build up from there is going to be off as well. And the higher you try to go, the more kind of off center you're going to be. So today what we're going to do is going to wipe the slate clean on what we think is the reason why we build muscle and strength and lose weight and everything like that, address why it's flawed, and then in subsequent episodes kind of go into what really is responsible for the results that you want. So we got a couple people coming on in here. Blue F Sniff Rats coming on. How's it going, Joe Phil? It's great to have everybody here. Let me get to one real quick. Grand Rapids asks, in a video you did, you said you like TRX more than bands, but I can't attach on my door. I'm thinking to buy bands to get used to doing harder push-ups. A useful or a waste of money? I mean, I can get similar without. Well, a couple of things there. One is, why wouldn't you be able to attach to a door? I mean, all suspension equipment should be able to attach to a door where you're doing it. But I think you're looking at it more of from the direction of adding more resistance for push-ups. And when you do push-ups off of a door anchor on a suspension setup, you're not going to get a whole lot of resistance with a classic push-up variation, because you have to be at an angle with your body. You can't get underneath the anchor because the door is in the way. So in that regard, yes. Typically, though, I find that the bands are less resistance than a classic push-up just on the floor. They do make pretty good hard bands. I know you can kind of see behind me there and over my left shoulder, the bands by the Pull-Up Dip Company. They make some fairly heavy ones, but keep in mind that typically you're going to get more resistance with a weighted implement or your body against gravity than a band, just because that resistance curve is so steep. That's my personal feeling. That's why I typically don't like bands, because you do have a strength curve when you do exercise. Like at the bottom of a push-up, you have more resistance against the muscles. At the top, the resistance eases off a little bit, but it's not a complete let-off. With bands, you go from a lot of resistance to a very big let-off to almost no resistance when the band is almost slack, and then back again. So that's my personal feeling, is I just prefer to use weight against gravity because it's more consistent resistance. I used to use bands a whole lot back in the day, and it was one of my first attempts to get strong, and it worked to a degree. But then when I started lifting actual weight implements against gravity, it was like night and day, not even close to a comparison. It was like, oh, wow, this is way better kind of thing. But that's not to say it can't work. That's not to say it isn't good. I know a lot of people like bands. You should experiment and see what works best for you, as always. Don't take my advice. Don't take my opinions. They're not based on anything other than my own experience, for what it's worth. But when it comes down to it, I would take, suspension training over bands any day of the week. In fact, I got those bands from Pull Up Dip. They sent me those. I hung them up on the wall, and they've been sitting there ever since. I haven't used them at all, to be perfectly honest. Esteban coming on. How's it going, my friend? Can you talk a bit about isometrics and any ideas to incorporate them into a workout? I started using them this week. Pause at the top and bottom of each exercise for 3 seconds. Good idea. Absolutely, for sure. But the way I like to use isometrics is there's 3 approaches. One is use it before your workout as a warm-up to engage the muscles. That's why we do it in grind-style calisthenics. Makes sure that your muscles are engaged, helps to prevent little injuries and tweaks, and also ensures a more satisfying workout. You can use it as a superset in your workout itself, and I like to use this a lot, especially if I'm having one of those workouts that's just a little and not really, like, I just can't seem to get on board with this workout today. I'm just kind of off. Then if you integrate the isometrics, it typically makes it a little bit easier to thoroughly work the muscles. And then finally, it's just a finisher. And that's a great way to finish off the muscles for potentially stimulating some good hypertrophy, where you just work them pretty good and hard, let's say with dips. And then you're just going to go with like an isometric chest press or something, and you just, whatever's left in the muscle, just blow it right on out. Really good finisher. So use it for either of those for the good effect that you're looking for. Warm up, bringing a workout to a higher level, especially if you're struggling, or as a finisher. So let's get on to today's topic then. Everything you know about fitness is flawed. What I mean by this is that most of our approaches to exercise and diet and how we get a result is based on what I call the method-based approach to fitness. The method-based approach works like this. If you do X, then you're going to get result Y. Okay, that's how we usually do. It's like, okay, if you lift weights, you're going to get bigger and stronger. If you do this diet, you're going to get leaner. If you do this ab exercise, you're going to have six-pack abs, and so on and so on and so on. And this is typically how we always think fitness works. And we usually reverse engineer this sort of thing. We start with the goal. And we're like, okay, I want abs, and I want bigger biceps, and I also want calves that are just gargantuan. Okay, that's the result. So therefore, what's the method that gets me there? What's the program? What's the exercise? What foods do I eat in the diet? And so on and so on and so on. Perfectly understandable where this is coming from, because you're always going to find a lot of examples of people say, I did X and I got result Y. Testimonials, anecdotal evidence, this movie star used this program to get in shape, and so on. It's not like we're stupid or you've been tricked and scammed into thinking this is how fitness works. It's just that's the only real thing we've had to go on. But there are several ways to look at fitness that basically take this whole method-based approach and really calls it into question. And I'll have a list here. First and foremost is that fitness is making use of a physiological adaptation of the human body. I think that's pretty obvious. We lose body fat, we gain body fat, we build muscle, we improve our nervous system coordination to have a better golf swing, or basically the reason why fitness works is because our bodies have a wide range of physiological adaptation to the environment or the stimuli we expose it to. Now, the thing to understand about this is the human body has worked this way since there's been humans. And we've experienced that type of physiological adaptation forever, okay? Ever since there's been human beings on the planet, every single person has experienced weight changes. Everybody's lost body fat, everybody's gained body fat, everybody's gotten stronger, everybody's gotten weaker, everybody's improved their ability to physiologically function and perform, and everybody's lost it. The physiological adaptation we're looking for has always existed and always happens to every single person ever since the dawn of civilization. So when we look at why does fitness work, we have to look at what is happening for all time, for everybody. Okay, you took a time machine 1,000 years in the future, and you're still going to find people who build muscle and strength and lose weight and get better at some sort of physiological activity. It's always happening. It happens to everybody. There's never an exception. Now, a method-based approach will tell you the reason why you lose weight or gain muscle or whatnot is because of the method you're using. But that doesn't hold up because there's no method that's been continuously practiced throughout history. Furthermore, there's no method that's continuously practiced by every human being on the planet. So if we want to say that method X causes result Y, then the only way that could possibly be true is if the only way we ever experience result Y is with method X. And that's almost never the case. So that's our first little piece of evidence against the method-based approach. Let me see about some more questions I can get to here. Enter username, very good username. Asks, hey Matt, what do you think about extremely slow reps to make the exercise harder? Good idea or waste of time? It depends. Does it make the exercise harder? That's something to experience for yourself. It can be good. It can be a waste of time. It all depends on what you're starting off with. Okay, so one of the things I'll be covering in later episodes is, again, this is the method-based approach. The method-based approach would say slow repetitions should produce a reliable result. However, one of the things we recognize about the method-based approach is there's never a reliable result, ever. Okay, you could give 1,000 people the same workout program with slow reps, and you're going to get 1,000 different results for everybody, across the board. There's no consistency. There's no reliability. Some people are going to build muscle. Some people are going to lose muscle. Some people are going to get stronger. Some people are going to get weaker. Some people are going to get better push-ups. Some people are going to get worse push-ups from it. So what we need to do is when we look at something like that and be like, is that going to work? We have to take into account your current situation. It's just like a GPS. I need to get to DIA. How do I get there? First question, well, where are you? Where are you starting off from? So will slow push-ups, make your push-ups strong? I don't know. What are your push-ups like now? What are you doing now with your push-ups? Are you struggling with doing push-ups in a controlled manner? You kind of drop down and you're using a lot of momentum, then yes, if doing them slower is harder, it's going to be beneficial. But if you're just kind of like, well, I'm just doing slower push-ups, but they don't really feel all that much different, a little harder, I guess, but not really any different, like I feel about the same, then probably not. It's probably not going to do anything different for you because we've already got that control. Otherwise, let's see, what else can we, okay, so back on track here. It's easy for me to get distracted. Hello, ADHD. So physiological adaptation always happens to every single person, always has happened, regardless of the lack of any sort of consistency with any particular approach to diet and exercise. That's point number one. Point number dos, okay? The vast majority of people who experience an adaptation or have a certain level of their shape, their strength, their leanness and stuff, never adhere to any one particular method in question. Okay, so think about it this way. There are over 1 billion people on this planet who are lean. They don't have a lot of body fat on them. They don't carry a lot of weight. They do not need to lose weight. They are very lean and healthy. The vast majority of them do not adhere to a low carbohydrate diet. They do not do fasting. They do not do keto. They do not do paleo. They don't do any of these sorts of dietary approaches that are like, you need to do this if you need to lose weight. This is one of the reasons why the low carb craze never really stuck with me very much, because when it hit, that was roughly shortly after I had studied abroad in Japan and went to China and all these other places. And it was an Asian studies major in college. And people were like, carbs are making us fat. Carbs are the way that we make fat. I'm like, guys, have you ever been to Asia? Like, there's a lot of people there, and a lot of them eat a lot of carbs, and most of them are not fat. So if we're trying to make this connection between carbs and fat, like, there's literally billions of people who are evidence to the contrary. That's not to say that there's not any sort of validity behind this idea, but when we have a method-based approach, we make the case of you do X, you get result Y. But if you look at most people who have Y, hardly any of them are ever doing X. Okay. Again, most people who build muscle never do so with strength training. They never do it in a gym, and they never do it with free weights or machines or anything like that. Instead, they do it with just some sort of physiological demand through their daily life. You know, when you were a little kid and you learned to ride a bicycle, chances are very good you built muscle learning to ride the bicycle, because your legs had to work harder on the bike going up hills and stuff than they were walking. So you built stronger legs. You didn't do it in a program. You didn't do it in a gym. You didn't do it with free weights or anything like that. You probably didn't even do squats. You were riding your bicycle. So we have to recognize that the second flaw in a method-based approach is that the majority of times when human beings experience the adaptation we're looking for, it's done in the absence of any particular method. So we can't reliably say we need a particular method to get a given result, because the evidence overwhelmingly is that result happens without that given method or any single method in particular. That's the second case against the method-based approach. Let's see, what else, other questions can I do? Glory asking, how do I make sure my nervous system is allowing me to use enough strength? Sometimes when I do pull-ups, I can only do 1 to 2, but I'm capable of average of 5 to 6, despite not having muscular fatigue. There's a lot of things to unpack here. A lot of times when we have a limitation, it could be nervous system. You're right on thinking that, because our muscles are driven by our nervous system. So there's a lot of things that can inhibit your nervous system. Stress, fatigue, sometimes just distraction can be a big inhibitor. So if you're doing pull-ups and someone's like, hey, Glory, can you look at this? Can you look at this? Here, look at this, look at this. You're distracted, so your nervous system's getting split between tasks. So making sure you're focused, making sure you're warming up. This is why I like overcoming isometrics as a warm-up, because it helps to get it on board. But a lot of times when you're doing an exercise and you feel like you have a limitation, it could be a number of other things. One is lack of stability. So if your pull-up, for example, are your shoulder blades back? That's the number one thing I find with people when it comes to pull-ups, is that they are not really looking at where their scapular protraction and retraction is. So if you try to do pull-ups and you have more protraction and your shoulders are forward, you're just less stable in your back and you're not going to be as strong in the movement. But if you have more retraction with your shoulder blades, which is why I recommend setting up with the bar or whatever directly underneath you instead of in front of you, so you're not reaching forwards, then you're going to be stronger. So it could be just as simple as that. But I like where your mindset is, because whenever you experience difference, like, well, I could do it 5 before, but this week I can only do 1 or 2. What's different? Where you find those differences is what's going to be the key to making more progress on a reliable basis. So you're asking the right questions. Just expand your search beyond the nervous system as well. And let's see. Okay, so now on to point number 3. And the last point here of against a method-based approach. Number 3, whenever you do find people who practice a given method, we have things that are popular now, calisthenics, low carb, keto, all these sorts of things. If you look at the general population practicing a given method, you'll notice that the majority of them fail to achieve a successful level of the adaptation they're looking for. Okay, so most people who diet fail to lose the weight they want. And those who do lose it fail to keep it off to a large degree. Most people who lift weights never really build much muscle and strength. Most people who take up cardio never really build that much endurance or lose that much weight. And yet with a method-based approach, we're like, if you do X, you get result Y. And this is something that you get more just aware of being in the trenches in fitness. You know, you spend 13 hours in the gym 5 days a week like I did, and you look around, it's like most people here, they're not getting what they want. Most of the people here in the weight room are not looking any different than the average Joe Schmo. You know, but of course we don't believe that because we go on Instagram and people are jacked and ripped and losing weight and there's success stories all over the place. Why? Because it's on social media. We believe that's real more than what's around us. Let me give you another case in point. I'm always talking about this guy I knew named Mark. Huge, supremely strong, amazing physique, right? Insanely. And his bread and butter moves were push-ups, pull-ups, and dips, right? He did them weighted with over 100 pounds and stuff. Very impressive. I keep talking about Mark for one simple reason, is because he had a very impressive physique, very impressive strength and stuff, but I met Mark over 20 years ago. But I keep talking about him because I haven't met anybody with that level of success since. I mean, anybody in person. I work in gyms. I see over 1,000 people come into one of the gyms that I used to work at. 1,000 people, not a single person in over 5 years that I worked at that gym had a body and abilities like Mark did. So we could look at Mark and be like, oh, wow, weighted pull-ups and push-ups and dips and stuff. Look at that physique and stuff. And yet it's been 20 years of watching people do the same thing without that level of success. And the point I'm trying to make is not to discourage you, but the reality is that failure is far more common in life than success. But we're not aware of that because success makes more noise than failure. People fail to get the results they want and they hide. They don't post it on social media. They don't post that, oh my gosh, I've tried losing weight again and I'm off the wagon, I give up, and so forth on social media, or they don't put it in testimonials and stuff like that. They're not making reality shows on failures for the most part. They're making noise about success. So because that's all the noise we hear, we think success is far more common, when in reality, it's not. It's not. Most people fail to achieve what they want with their methods. So let's sum this all up. Physiological adaptation is always happening. It happens to every single person, regardless of the method that they're using. 2 is when we look at any sort of condition or adaptation we have, it's in the absence of any one particular diet or exercise method. And 3, even the people who are majority practicing that method, the minority achieve success while the majority of them fail. So these are the 3 cases that I bring to the court for consideration on why the method-based approach does not work. Now, that's not to say the methods you followed aren't important. Absolutely, they are. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But the idea of practice method X, get result Y is the bulk of how we believe that fitness works. And when we look at just this simple anecdotal evidence of what's happening, it's not happening. It's just simply not working. It's a failure rate of huge proportions. And we can't keep going along assuming that's how it works, because then you just get stuck in this whole paralysis by analysis of, well, that method didn't work, then I need a different method. Well, that method didn't work. And we just keep trying different diets, different workout programs, different exercises, different supplements, different everything else, thinking, well, if that method didn't work, I need a different method. When in reality, the whole flaw is it's not about the method. It's not your diet that makes you lean. It's not push-ups that are building muscle. And I know it's easy to fall into that. Back in the day, I lost quite a bit of body fat, got a hell of a lot leaner. My endurance went through the roof because I was a bike racer. For the longest time, I thought, yeah, mountain bike racing is great for helping people lose weight. Now I look back, it's like, dude, the mountain biking had almost nothing to do with it. You know, it was very, very foolish of me to say, yes, anybody who wants to lose weight should take up cycling. It's like, no, that's bad advice, because it really did not come from the method. Instead, the method was playing a different role that I now recognize is more important. Let's get into some more of these questions. Sneakiest coming on. Hey, Matt, could barbell lunges be a legit alternative to barbell squats? I love this. I love this. Lunges and squats. Now, I know a lot of people out there will treat the squat like it's some sort of a redheaded stepchild to the squat, like squats are king and you can't do anything with lunges. And to a degree, they're right, but that's largely because a lot of people don't understand how lunges are to be done. The biggest lesson you need to understand about lunges is lunges and squats should be fundamentally the same thing. Your legs should feel like they're working almost identically between the two. If you do lunges, you should feel it a certain way in your legs. If you do squats, it should feel almost exactly the same. If there's a big difference, you're doing something wrong in the lunges, or at least different in the lunges. It shouldn't be this different. It should be the same because fundamentally, both are the same movement pattern. You should be using your legs the same way. The range of motion in your joints should be the same. Your stability, your muscle activation should be the same. I tell people all the time at the bodyweight gym I work at, I'm like, when you're doing lunges, it's nothing different than just alternating single leg squats with rear leg assistance, essentially. That's what it should be. So if you can get it there, then yes, absolutely. Lunges should be a very good alternative to barbell back squats. Hell, they may even be better. You could make the argument that they're even better in several ways. I always said lunges are the single most functional exercise in existence. I know a lot of people are like, no, deadlifts, it's all about picking stuff up. No, deadlifts are number 3 on my list. Not even number 2, they're number 3. Number 1 is lunges by far. Why? Because all lunges are an exaggerated step. It's stepping forward or backwards or to the side, depending on how you do it, but typically it's stepping forward. Well, deadlifts are best because you're picking stuff up. Yeah, how many times have you picked something up today? 4 or 5 times or whatever. How many steps have you taken? Right? Thousands. Even if you're sedentary, hundreds, right? So that's why I'm always saying lunges are by far the most functional exercise because all they are is an exaggerated step. They're amplifying the demands you have when you're stepping. And we're stepping with walking, climbing stairs, running. All the things we do with our legs is mostly locomotion. And that's what lunges are. Number 2, for those who are curious, is carrying. Carrying is the number 2 functional exercise out there because, yeah, okay, you can lift up a weight, but can you carry it? It would happen all the time. We'd hire kids, from the local gyms who would help us deliver exercise equipment seasonally. That's what I used to do before I was a trainer. And they could pick up a treadmill, but 10 seconds later, they'd be like, oh, dude, my grip, oh, my back, oh, I got to set it down. I can't do this kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you can pick it up, but you can't carry it anywhere. And if you think about it from a functional standpoint, anytime you pick something up in real life, you're picking it up to carry it somewhere. And if you're carrying it, you're going to spend far more time carrying it than picking it up. If you need to, carry a box of books, so you're helping your friend move, you're going to spend about 3 seconds picking it up and putting it down, but you could spend over 1.5 minutes carrying it through the house. So number 1 is lunges, number 2 is carries, number 3 is something where you're picking it up. And even then I would say it's a hip hinge style movement there. So you should be getting a lot more out of lunges, if not as much out of squats. And if not, we got to look at your lunge and see how you're doing that for sure. Let's talk about some more things. Let's see, more questions. I don't want to miss anybody. Again, if you put a hey Matt in the subject line, I know that's addressed to me. Frotan Inferno coming on. Hey Matt, do you think you can get good workouts in with push-ups, pull and squats while fasting most of the day? And what foods and nutrients would you say are essential a few hours and not fasting each day? Okay, so this is an energy question. Okay, so when it comes to diet, I always tell people, especially those looking to lose weight, but to a degree when it comes to workouts too. Remember, one of the 4 fundamental objectives of a healthy diet is energy and metabolic support. Okay, if you have a healthy diet, your energy levels should be good and high. Okay, so your ability to get a good workout with what you're talking about depends on your energy level. It's not your diet, it's not your foods and anything like that. It's how do you feel in your workout? If you go into your workout and you're like, I'm going to tear this mother to shreds, and you've got energy and you're pounding out the reps and you're feeling good, I don't really care what your diet looks like. I don't care how you get there. You're on the right track. But you could have an expert be like, this is the way you should eat, and this is how you're fasting, and this is, but if you're like 10 minutes in your workout and you're just, oh, I just have nothing for energy today. I just nothing. I can't, like you're going through your reps and halfway through, you're like, screw it. I don't care, whatever kind of thing. You got a big problem. This is what happened to me a lot of times. Years ago, I went through several like dietary just experiments. Like, I'm going to try this diet, I'm going to try that diet kind of thing. And by and large, a lot of the times when I was experimenting, I just felt like this total lack of drive and empathy or apathy in my workouts. At one point I told my friend, I was like, you know what? The house could be burning down right now. I'd be on the couch going, I guess I'll leave sooner or later. Yeah, I know. Life is in danger. I guess I'll get up, whatever. That's how I felt, and that's what I was telling him, like, dude, your diet sucks if you feel like that. I don't care what the science says. And someone's like, oh, eating this way is the best way. If your energy level's in the tank, your diet sucks. Okay, full stop. So look at your energy level in your workouts. And if it sucks, adjust accordingly. Increase the amount of food. A lot of times maybe need to increase carbohydrate level a bit, or just have a shorter feeding window, or just not even fast at all. Like, I've run into several people where they're like, best thing I ever did was give up the intermittent fasting. Energy levels way better. Workouts are way better kind of thing. I had a guy one time, is at the end of a cycling class, and he was just kind of like on the bike, like hunched over, and he's like, oh, geez. I'm like, you okay, man? You feeling all right? He's like, oh, this class just really drained me. And you could hear in his voice, he was the voice of a broken man, so to speak. It's like, are you okay? He's like, oh, just usually I work out, last night, but I came in today and stuff. And I go right into trainer mode, of course, got to figure this out. And I was like, okay, so did you have breakfast this morning? Did you get enough water, so forth and stuff? And he's like, no, it's intermittent fasting, got to be burning fat kind of thing. And so I'm like, well, yeah, but if you end up having this type of thing where you can't get the evening class, you got to get the class the next day. And it was like 2 p.m. at this point. It wasn't in the morning. It was much later in the day. He hadn't eaten anything in over 24 hours. And I was like, peanut butter and crackers, kind of thing. Like at least have something in your system so you can get through the class. I'm not saying you need a meal, but I can't do that. I'll break my fast. I won't be burning fat. And then I made the mistake of like, actually, you're always kind of burning fat. You don't need to be fasting and all this. And he didn't want to hear it kind of thing. But the bottom line was, it's like, if you're feeling like that in your workout, your diet sucks. That's the bottom line. You're supposed to feel good in your workouts. Your diet is supposed to make you feel good, not tired and drained. And if it is, change it. End of discussion. Okay, I'm off my hobby horse here. Let's ask some more questions. Glory, back on. How do injuries happen in sports at an advanced level? Like, even for athletes that are conditioning a lot, they still get out of the game for a while due to an injury every 1 or 2 years or so. Yeah, exactly. So there's always a lot of things that causes injuries. I mean, sometimes it's just acute impact. Like in football, someone hits your knee the wrong way, ACL tear. And there's nothing you can do to really prevent that. Like, you can't make your body invincible to the forces that are pacted upon it. I got a knee injury right now that I'm still nursing from a ski accident. I took off a jump, and I was not expecting to get the height and distance that I got off of it. I mean, it was one of those things where I expected a little pop and land, and I was up in the air long enough to be like, oh, this is not going to be good. This is not going to end well at all. And when I hit the snow, my knee just got wrenched really, really bad. And I'm still, dealing with limitations and stuff. It's like, yeah, there's nothing I could have done there. I was in the air, and I'm like, I'm going to land this as well as I can, but there's no way this is going to not hurt. So a lot of times that's the case. Injury happens. You can't prevent it entirely. There's no such thing as injury-free physical activity. You're always going to have some degree of risk. You can only manage it by, of course, training the body to be resilient, stable, consistent in your training and stuff. And usually, if you have an injury that's recurring, where it's like, oh, I keep pulling this hamstring. Okay, we got to look at why are your hamstrings so susceptible to injury. But then that's a case-by-case basis. Like, maybe your glutes aren't firing. Maybe it's your glute med that isn't firing. It can be a lot of different things going on there. Let's see, more folks coming in saying they appreciate the channel. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, here's a timely one. Oh, uneasy one. Hello, mate. I'm a Muslim, and this month my religion usually in fasting month. Yep, it's Ramadan. I think that starts now or this weekend. I think from 5 to 10 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. every day. So, what about my exercise routine? Any tips that I can do to maintain with my exercise? Okay, very good. Practical application here. So, here's part of what we're dealing with. You have a dietary shift and change that's happening for religious reasons. And usually when people are making dietary choices, I recommend it's about eating healthy, improving energy levels, sustainable habits, that sort of thing. But sometimes we have habits that we adopt for non-nutrition reasons. Some people could be vegan for the sake of, I just feel it's better for the environment and I don't want to eat animals for, the way they're raised and farmed and everything. It's like, hey, great, wonderful. It's certainly legitimate, but don't talk to me about how being vegan is better on a nutritional standpoint. You can make anything great nutritionally from the diet just by adjusting the diet, but don't tell me that that's what I need to do for a nutritionist standpoint. Same thing here. Ramadan, that's a religious thing. It's not about nutrition. So we have a bit of a conflict here. So you have religious dietary practices versus what may be, against your best interest for your health and performance. Of course, I don't expect anybody to change. You're practicing Ramadan, you're practicing your fasting, you do that. But recognize that it may be a little bit of a hindrance to your energy levels and how you like to practice your workouts and stuff. No problem, no big deal. If your energy level is decreasing and stuff, just use with what you got. You're like, okay, my energy level, my intensity in my workouts, it's just not quite there. Then drop it down a bit. Cut back the volume. Cut back the intensity. You're like, okay, I've got 100 push-ups to do. Do 20, right? Don't go all out. Make it a little bit easier. Downshift. Treat it like a deloading sort of thing. Maybe practice some more types of exercise that are less demanding on the body. Some flowing yoga routines, or just getting out for a nice walk or something. Have some walking time with friends and family and meditations on the practices of the holiday and the rituals and stuff. Using that as a more productive way. You don't want to feel like the habits of your religious practices and your fitness are conflicting with one another. Change your fitness to be more in alignment with your religious practices, because it's temporary. It's not like I've got to do this for the next 10 years or something like this. It's a short period of time. So just modify a little bit. And then once your fasting and everything is done, then you ramp back on up. We have flexibility, adjustments. And if you don't have that much energy, then don't use too much energy. It's that simple. It's like me. I got my knee injury. There's a lot of stuff about my legs I couldn't really do. No biggie. Am I going to lose a step? Figuratively? Absolutely. Am I losing a little strength in my legs? Sure. But that's fine. Once the knee heals up and everything, I'll be right back at it and I'll gain it back, and there's no harm, no foul. Michael is asking from Dark Bay Dede, any new tips to stimulate the traps? Yeah, use them. Basically, that's it. So I'm always giving my clients a lot of shoulder blade movement exercises. And remember, one of the best ways to condition a muscle is not to use it more in a particular exercise. It's to use it more all the time. So what I want my clients to do, because a lot of people have very underdeveloped traps, and I'm talking the entire trap. Usually we think of the top of the traps. The traps are a big muscle group. They go all the way down practically to the middle of your back. I'm always giving them front shoulder protraction, downward dogs, like scapular pull-ups, scapular rows, that sort of thing. And we're practicing using the traps. Maybe some isometrics we're holding to engage the traps and stuff. And then what I'll do, especially if I'm new to working with them, is like, okay, what are your traps doing in every exercise we do? I was working with a young lady today, and literally everything we do is like, this is a trap exercise. No, this is lunges. Yes, this is a trap exercise, because I had kettlebells in her hands. And I was like, I want your traps down, locked, and engaged for stability during the lunges, right? So that's what I usually recommend, especially for something as integral as the traps, because you use the traps for almost everything in your exercises, is get them working and get good at using them, and then use them all the time. Like everything. I don't care if you're doing freaking calf raises, traps, get those suckers on. And that way you'll have much more activation, and you'll also have much more stable upper body for it as well. Kira and Hema, do you have any good bulking tips that aren't often mentioned? Yeah, just keep eating. I've never been much for the bulk and cut cycles and stuff because largely, for the most part, they're a waste of time for most people. I know in the bodybuilding world, they're a little bit more practical for getting ready for shows and stuff like that, or eking out that last little 1%. But for most people, bulking and cutting just means you're going to get a lot fatter, and then you're going to struggle to diet off the fat, and you're going to end up right where you started anyway. A lot of work to not really gain much benefit. So typically, like whenever people are like, well, should I eat more? I'm like, well, just eat more. Add some more eggs, add some ice cream and peanut butter to the diet and stuff like that. Get the calories up a few hundred calories a day. See what happens, right? If you are not eating enough, then eating more should give you a very noticeable return pretty quickly. But don't get stuck into the, perpetual bulking cycle. I've met more than a few people who are like, I just got to eat more. I just got to eat more. I got to eat more. I'm like, dude, you are 35% body fat. You are eating plenty. Trust me. But that was always their knee-jerk reaction. Oh, I'm not gaining muscle, so I got to eat more. It's like, you are a calorie surplus, man. Why are you still trying to force feed yourself at 2 a.m. when you're clearly eating more than enough? So it's not necessarily something I adhere to. If you want to eat more, by all means, eat more. But it shouldn't be something that's a big, big deal sort of thing. Lewis, hey, Matt, what are your thoughts on volume and intensity for people who do other endurance sports, such as running, a 40-year-old runner? Thanks for all you do. Yes, a question for my area of expertise. This is what I addressed very much in my book, Bodyweight Training for Cycling, because with endurance athletes like yourself, back when I was riding a whole lot, you've got a ton of expenditure already. This is why a lot of endurance athletes don't do any sort of strength conditioning programs, because it's like, I'm already putting out a lot of time and a lot of energy for the sake of your running training, your cycling training, and so on. Like, you want me to do more exercise, which is why the programs in that book are all about, basically micro workout approaches, like 2 or 3 exercises, real short, quick, just get the muscle fired up, make it stronger, and then go and do your regular training. So yeah, you shouldn't need a lot. As an endurance athlete, you do need strength, you do need stability and stuff, but you don't need a lot. For the most part, as a runner, it's almost all lower body anyway. I've got a client who's a runner who came to me and she's like, I can't run very well for very long. I'm very susceptible to injury. This is another case where lack of stability is causing a lot of injuries kind of stuff. And basically we just had her got her to the point where she's doing kettlebell swings. That's about all she needed. That's it. Kettlebell swings. We got, good hip hinge, glute and hamstring activation, a little bit of lateral hip stuff, and she's good. It's like, good, you got your kettlebell swing down, rock on. Do about 20 of those a few times a week and you're good. Have fun. And it's working. She goes for a run. She's like, God, I feel like I can run forever. Oh, this is awesome and wonderful. Throwing in now some weighted lunges, once again with the lunges, and just some push and pull just to round things out. Some strap pushing and rowing and stuff, just to make sure we're kind of covering those bases. But it's literally like a set twice a week. That's it. You don't need much. You don't need a whole lot. It doesn't need to be like a hard workout. So basically, I would say, to sum it up for an endurance athlete, you just need enough to teach the muscle to engage and be a little stronger. That's all. That's all. And you only need a few sets a week for that to happen. Asking, do you still recommend the Al Cavadlo Get Strong program? Absolutely. I recommend any program. It's very hard to find a bad program out there. So yeah, go for it. Rock on. Bled Terrace asks, you talk about energy levels, but how does one do this when trying to lose body fat without counting calories? We'll have to enter a calorie deficit. Won't be reflected in lower energy levels. Not always. Lots of times it can be an increase in energy levels. One of the things I tell people a lot with their diet and exercise habits is, you're on the right track when your energy level is going up, not down, kind of thing. Because that happens a lot, where people will start to feel stronger and they'll get more active in the gym, and they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just going crazy. I got all this energy. I'm eating better foods and my energy level's going great. And remember, a calorie deficit doesn't always have to come from eating less. It can come from burning more. My old nutrition professor in college referred to this as a relative calorie deficit instead of an absolute calorie deficit where you're decreasing the amount you eat. And he was a big fan of, you shouldn't necessarily look at just eating less. You should be looking at moving a lot more. And it depends on your circumstances too. Some people are going to make more strides eating less. Some people are way better off moving more and not trying to eat less. So if you came to me and you're like, okay, my diet, it's like, where do I cut back more? I'm already eating fairly little. I'm not going to tell you to eat less. I'm like, we got to get you moving kind of thing, because ultimately you do lose it by burning it off. You don't lose body fat by consuming less. You're always losing by burning it off. So you want to have strength training. You want to be active. You want to be active as much as you can throughout the day and not doing things that necessarily drain you and exhaust you like crazy. If you're doing cardio to the point where you are just staggering out of the gym, it's not the approach I would take. In fact, if I was trying to lose weight, I would say you want to leave the gym at a higher level of energy than when you went into it. You want to come out of that gym feeling like you got fired out of a cannon, not like, oh my God, I'm going to be just so drained and exhausted for the rest of the day. Bad idea. Your energy level when you're losing weight is by far your most valuable asset. By far. That's why the most popular and effective weight loss drug is just caffeine. You know why? Because when your energy level is up, your expenditure goes up and your appetite goes down. But when your energy level is low, the opposite happens. You just sit and you have less movement, and all you want to do is order takeout. So when you are trying to lose weight, you know, definitely like, let's cut back on food. Sure, cut back on the junk food and stuff. But if you're finding yourself just drained, you may be a little bit far. You may be a little too low there. And look at your energy level too, or look at your movement patterns. Because a lot of times, if you're not moving very much, your energy level tanks. Sheriff, sorry, I totally butchered that name. My bad, my friend. Hossein asking, hey, Matt, I get really inspired by advanced calisthenics moves like muscle ups, 360, full planche, push-ups, awesome. Are these exercises harmful for the joints long-term when you get older? Probably not, but it all depends on how you approach them. A lot of times what ends up happening with these approaches is people will rush their progress, where they'll start to make a little progress and they're like, okay, now I'll go to the next level in this progression standard, or I'll do this next one, or how long can you hold the planche for? Oh, I'm holding. I don't recommend that. Same kind of approach as I was just talking about. End the workout feeling better than when you did. So you don't want to hold it as long as you can. Hold it as well as you can. You don't want to just exhaust yourself with the activity. When you're doing something like a muscle up and you're like, how many can I do and stuff? Don't challenge your work capacity with those. Okay, so when we're looking to build muscle, particularly, we're challenging our work capacity. And when you're trying to challenge your work capacity, you want exercises that are really basic, really fundamental, and really hard to mess up. In other words, from the technique, right? So that's the stuff to challenge your work capacity, like sled drives, sprinting, doing like regular dips and push-ups, stuff where even in your worst technique, it's still relatively safe. But when you're doing exercises where it's like, well, if a technique starts to get a little wonky, there's a lot of stress on the joints, that's not what you take to failure. That's not what you do as much as you possibly can. You don't do that like, let me practice my front lever for an hour today. No, practice it until you start to notice I'm starting to kind of go downhill a little bit with the technique or my energy level, boom, and end it right there. You know, don't make it an objective to do it as much as possible. Do it as an objective to do it better. And that will probably be one of the better ways to protect you from that. And with stuff like that, get a coach too. You'll make a lot faster progress, and they'll be able to spot those little things that will probably wear you out in time. Like they could be like, okay, your right scap is slightly elevated. That's probably going to lead to a shoulder issue down the line. So let's pack that down. You'll make faster progress and potentially avoid injuries. So get a coach if you can. David Baker, hey Matt, tried GTG, Grease the Groove, several times using 50% of max reps, as I've normally heard, without much success. Sure. Well, success of what? What are you trying to do? Then try dropping to just 2 to 3 reps more frequently. This worked much better, more proficient. Yeah, it's always about what is your definition of success with these sorts of things. Remember, grease the groove is great for practice. When you're practicing something, you're trying to get better at doing it. Don't look at it as endurance. Don't look at it for building muscle. Don't look at it for building strength. Use it for practice. I just want to get more comfortable with doing the exercise. And if you do that, then there's your success. But that's what it's good for. All right. Let's see what else we got. Everybody's conversing with one another. I love it. You guys are always such a strong community back and forth. This is fantastic. Good question here. Hi, Matt. Could you give your quick bullet points on getting lean without counting calories and macros? Yes. Sorry, I did not address this earlier. Thank you for reminding me. So here's the way I usually approach weight management with diet and stuff. Number one, stabilize. This is something I'll be addressing in the next several episodes. Before you do anything, when it comes to diet and exercise, but especially diet, just get normal with what you do. How much are you eating? When are you eating? What are you eating? You know, if you're like, I eat a donut every morning, great, eat a donut every morning. Just get normal and stable in your normal daily habits, okay? Because remember, we don't get a change in that physiological adaptation I was talking about through your habits. I don't care what your diet looks like. I don't care what your workout program looks like. That's not what produces results. You get that physiological adaptation by creating a delta in your normal habits. Okay, so you need to know what normal is to begin with. If your diet's all the way over the place and I was like, I tried this diet and I did this and I go up and down and left and right, you don't know what normal is, so you have no way of knowing what you need to do. So just get stable first and foremost. This is roughly how much I eat, when I eat, and just ballpark. I'm not saying you need to be like, you know, Bill Murray and Groundhog Day is every day's the same thing, although it doesn't hurt. You know, sometimes when people are more proficient in weight management, they'll usually have like one meal that's kind of on point every time, like every morning, same thing kind of deal. And every dinner, you know, same kind of thing. So the more consistent you make your diet, the better. Then you create a delta. That's simple. Less of whatever normal is, right? It's like, okay, I usually for lunch, I have, go down to the cafeteria, I get a sandwich and I have fries and a cookie and a soda. Okay, great. Now, how many calories is that? How much fat is that? How many? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Create a delta. Okay, instead of the fries, I'm going to have a salad. And instead of the soda, I'm going to switch to diet or water or tea or coffee or whatever. And instead of the cookie, I'm going to have an apple. Okay. Now, we could look at that and be like, well, what is the calorie difference? What is the fat difference? And who cares? It doesn't matter. It's less than normal. That's all it needs to be. It just needs to be less than normal when trying to create the deficit. Same goes in the other direction. You're like, I want to see if I can start to kick some hypertrophy up. Maybe I need to eat a little more. Good. You having that sandwich? Good. Eat 2. Or it's a half sandwich, you know, kind of cut in half. So eat 1.5 kind of thing. Okay. There you go. Again, what is the numbers? Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's a delta. It's a change in a direction. That's all it needs to be. So get to normal and then create a delta. Same thing in your workouts. All right. It's like, okay, this is what I usually do in my workout. I do my push-ups and I do my rows on the TRX. Good. You're at a 45-degree angle. Get down. How far down? I don't care. Just down further. Okay, good. Try it and do it there. Oh God, that's harder. Good. Awesome. You're going to probably get stronger from that. What is the weight? What is the angle? What is the quantifiable metrics? Who cares? I don't know. Just get down. Just make it harder. Oh my gosh, that's a lot harder. All right. We're on the right track. Awesome. You're welcome. You just need that delta. And you can't know what the delta is if you're all over the place. So just get level, normal, and stable, and then create the delta any way you want. It doesn't really matter, but it should be pretty obvious too. Don't be one of these people who's like, okay, so I have the sandwich, and instead of American cheese, I have cheddar cheese, which typically has 3.2% less calories. Don't do this little hair splitting thing. Like, it should be a bang, smack in the face difference. Like, wow, that's a lot more. Wow, that's a lot less. That's a big difference. That's the sort of thing that's going to produce some sort of a result. Raquel, hey Matt, not about calories today. What's the deal with aerobic and anaerobic? I'm understanding it right. If I want to run faster, I have to run slower because that way I will build not really. So here, your body has 3 energy pathways, metabolic pathways. Think of it as like slow, medium, and fast. Aerobic, your phosphagen glycolytic system. I'm always getting that name wrong, I know. And then, of course, your creatine phosphate system. And it's all about what type of energy you're producing or what degree of energy you're producing kind of thing. So when you're conditioning yourself, you condition the pathway relative to the activity you need. So this is why it doesn't make sense for like NFL linemen to go and run 10 miles because you're using different energy level, pathway for running 10 miles than you are exploding off the line trying to sack a quarterback. So you have to condition the energy pathway you want. Now, to be honest, you're always using all 3. It's not like, oh, I'm using this energy pathway, the others are totally neglected. No, you're always using all 3. It's just to what degree. So when you're training, you want to basically use your body energetically or metabolically the way you want to progress. So if you, for example, want to be that NFL lineman and you want to go and then you rest and then you go and then you rest and you go, don't run 10 miles. It's the same thing though. If you're like doing HIIT training, don't expect to run a marathon. You want to train in the capacity you want to improve, if that makes sense. You gain that which you challenge. So I'm always saying that's one of the most fundamental aspects of smart conditioning. You gain that which you challenge. Don't assume you're going to gain something because of the method you use. If it's not challenging your strength, you're not going to get stronger. I don't care what it is. I don't care how you're training. People are like, this exercise builds muscle and strength. Not if it doesn't challenge your muscular work capacity or strength. If it's not challenging it, it won't build it. Why? Because it's not creating a delta. If it does, then it will. All right. Oh, good one here on energy. Again, this is a good energy level lesson here. Catherine, it's the reason I feel totally drained after cardio like running, whereas HIIT gives me more energy. So yes, you're just simply not doing as much of it. It's that simple. So think of it this way. It's the old analogy. It's not really true, but it's the old analogy of the frog going into the hot water, right? You put in the hot water and you slowly turn it up and the frog just sits there and boils to death and dies. But you have the frog in the hot water and you just drop it in the hot water. And it's like, shit, it's hot. And it hops right out. HIIT is like dropping it in the hot water. When you have a quick ramp up of intensity, your body gets hit with a much more acute sense of stress and it stops it a lot faster. Versus cardio is just drain, 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 drain. Because you can always drain more, right? But when you're doing the higher intensity stuff, you reach a point where it's like, I got to stop or I got to take it down a notch. And usually it's also a shorter period of time. Many of the times when I've had my highest levels of exhaustion, it's lower intensity stuff, like going for a really long walk, going for a really long bike ride. But, I'm not going to get that level of fatigue from doing push-ups. It's just, there's no way I can have that level of intensity. So HIIT is typically going to be much shorter, less total energy burn from what you're doing. And it's not possible to reach that much fatigue from a total energy drain of your systems just because you're not doing enough of it. And you can't because it's higher intensity. That's why. Let's see, what else can we do? Frotan coming on. Hey, Matt, thanks for all the answers. Can I ask you if there's a way to avoid veins becoming very visible? I've been doing forearm micro workouts and my veins are beginning to pop out, but I'd rather they don't stay. No, it's largely genetic. Unfortunately, some people want them. Vascularity is the technical term. Some people don't want it, kind of thing. It's about body fat levels. It's about just how your veins are structured in your body. It's also just what's going on now is your muscles are getting bigger, so they're pushing the veins up against the skin is what's going on. So it's largely a genetic thing that's going on, and not a whole lot you can do about it, unfortunately. And especially, you notice it, of course, in areas where there's less body fat. Typically, forearms don't have a large amount of body fat compared to the rest of the body. That's why you usually see it there. the forearms, the feet, the calves, sometimes in the neck, a little bit kind of stuff. So yeah, you build up the muscle, it's going to push the veins out against the skin, and that's pretty much what's going on. Jose Juan, once again, hey Matt, you talk about bringing my workout intensity and volume down during my fasting month. Doing micro workouts may be the best choice I have. Yeah. Choosing the 3-chain push-pull squat and maybe split it. Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. Wonderful idea. Because if you do like push-pull squat, push-pull squat. Wow, geez, I can't talk today. For the split, that's going to keep the amount of energy you're expending each day relatively low because it's just a push, pull, and squat movement chain. I recommend push-up variation, a row variation, and like lunges or something like that. And so micro workout kind of thing as well. So keep it short, keep it quick. Like I was talking about earlier, when the things are longer duration, that's typically more draining. So the beautiful thing about micro workouts is because they're so much shorter in duration, you can make them so much more intense. So usually that's the case that happens. Intensity is often more accessible even when we're tired. Funny story, years ago when I tested for my 5th degree black belt, I had a lot of very exhausting work that I did delivering exercise equipment, and I didn't eat very well. I was up late, and basically I got sick. Now it was just one of those colds that it didn't really affect me that much, but it totally drained me. So here I am in my black belt testing. I'm like, this is kind of a big deal. I got to bring the heat kind of thing. But I was like, I feel like crap. Like I have a low ceiling. Well, what I noticed real quick was I can go hard and fast for about 30 seconds. And then after that, it's boom, a super steep drop in my energy level. So I quickly learned that whenever my instructor called me, I was like, okay, do this exercise, free spar these people kind of thing. I learned I got to bring the heat for about 30 seconds because that's all I've got. So when we are not feeling our best, or when, fasting or everything is low, we still have access to intensity because again, the 3 energy pathways, the higher level ones, the creatine phosphate system, that's not depending too much on more of the aerobic or even the glycolytic systems to a large degree. So you can access that energy level, even though you're pretty drained. You just can't do it for very long. So that's basically what I did. I was free sparring a buddy of mine. And as soon as my instructor said, go, I just went right after him because I wanted to be like, I've got 30 seconds. That's it. And I was just going and trying to kick and hit him with everything I had. He's like, oh, sweet Jesus, dear Lord, man, holy smokes. But afterwards I was like, and I'm done. And then he just picked me apart because I had nothing left. But I learned that is like, even when we're tired and stuff, rely on intensity. That's also why when people ask me, they're like, I'm not feeling so great today. I'm kind of recovering from a cold and stuff. I'm like, good. We prioritize the strength training, not the cardio. Stay away from the cardio machines. We're going to get push-ups. We're going to have long rest periods. But when you still do your strength stuff, we're going to go pretty hard. Get your weighted dips in, your archer push-ups and stuff. We're going to have intensity. We're just not going to drain you with a lot of volume. This is great how all these are kind of coming in and integrating with one another. Jens M asking good question. Hey, Matt, can bad eating habits over time, decades, screw with your metabolism more or less permanently? Somewhat, but keep in mind that your body adapts to diet the same way it adapts to exercise. It's going to make the best use of whatever you're eating in. So if you're eating nothing but fast food and junk food and stuff like that, basically it's going to try to adapt the gut bacteria. It's going to adapt your digestion process. It's going to adapt to a certain degree your energy use of what substrates you're burning. Even your taste buds and stuff change a little bit because all your body knows is, I guess this is what I got to work with. I got to make the most of it. So in a way you could argue, it's like, yeah, it's going to be optimally adapted for working off fast food. Of course, we could certainly make the argument that, well, if you're eating better whole foods and decent foods and getting good nutrients, then it's giving your body the ability to have more to work with. Okay. So, and when you say bad eating habits, like what's a bad eating habit too? Like a lot of times people come to me and they're like, oh, my diet is terrible. It's awful. It's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with it? They're like, I eat bread. Like, trust me, that's not a bad thing. Like you're fine. Unless you're literally like, I eat a loaf of bread for breakfast every morning and that's like half of my calories. It's like, no, you're fine. Your diet isn't bad just because you eat a certain food once in a while kind of thing. It's more of a deprivation of stuff you can use, nutrients, enough calories, that sort of thing, which is why, ironically enough, a lot of the fad diet advice is actually going to result in a bad diet, because it's all based off of restriction and deprivation, which is completely the opposite approach you want for a real healthy diet, which I'll address in a future episode here for the YouTube channel. So make sure you're up on RDP Instagram, where I announce what the topic will be of the podcast coming on up each time. Last couple of questions here. Blue F. Hey, Matt, I finally got out of a toxic relationship. Congratulations, my friend. Thank you for the advice on staying single. Very good. Yeah, I mean, relationships, if they're not helping, they're going to hold you back, kind of thing. So well done. I'm happy for you. I hope you can use this time to kind of be by yourself, do some personal growth, some introspection, and more importantly, learn what you can from that experience. Because as much as we love to blame the other person in a toxic relationship, we have to recognize some of the responsibility fell on ourselves too. You were in that relationship. I've been in toxic relationships before. And the problem with a lot of people that happens is they'll go from one toxic relationship to the next. And it's because they're not learning their lesson from the other one. Why are you attracted to that type of person? Why are you, when you're in the initial stages and everything's wonderful in a relationship and they start treating you a certain way, why are you taking that? Or why are you willing to accept that, or whatever? Learn from it so you don't get back into another toxic relationship. Grow and be happy, my friend. There's a lot of great things that can come from a good relationship, but only if we personally grow for ourselves. Next question here. Hey, Matt, would you still recommend doing those inverted straight arm pull-up type things you use to do for posterior chain development? They look really fun. Absolutely. So this is, God, this was a long time ago. If I know the video you're referring to, that is an old video. That is a movement that I really recommend. It's basically like a dynamic front lever, but it's a good way to really get that full spinal extension at the top, which is also a good way to integrate your spinal extension with your scapular movement, which is very key. Again, I was talking about scapular movement. It's kind of like your foundation for a lot of your upper body. So I definitely recommend them. Definitely, for sure, doing with your bent legs. They're much more intense than people realize, but they're basically a dynamic front lever, which is actually a really, really good lat exercise. Funny point, I never really do front levers very much. And the other day I was demonstrating to a friend. They're like, what's a front lever? I'm like, well, it's kind of like this. And I just hit one, like a front lever. And he's like, oh, wow. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, wow. That's what, Phil over at Mindful Mover always calls free gains. It's like, oh, wow, I guess I got a front lever. That's new kind of thing, but I never really trained for it. Still waiting. Hey, Matt, what are there body weight variations of carries? Oh, this is awesome question, because you said that the number 2 for functional exercise. Absolutely. Carries are wonderful. And I always recommend people practice with carries, because what are they? They're an isometric. They're an isometric exercise typically for the body and the core and the legs, and they're doing all sorts of things. And some of the best things to carry are odd objects. Kettlebells, sandbags, people is a good one. When I studied abroad in Japan, I carried my host family's kids around. I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I'm like, okay, kids, pile on. And they think it's great and they're having fun and stuff. And I'm actually working as I'm, carrying them around the apartment kind of thing. So external loads, very good for carries and stuff. The front lever stuff I just talked about is actually technically a carry for the upper body. So when I started doing that type of motion years ago, I noticed it was a hell of a lot easier for me to suddenly carry treadmills. It's like, wow, this got a lot lighter. So lever work is really good. Hanging work is really good. So just hanging from the bar and doing leg raises, that's technically a carry. You're carrying your body weight for that sort of thing. Lunges are sort of a carry. So anything you're doing when you're holding weight and you're doing lunges and stuff, that's a carry. And you can play around with unilateral carries. So you have a kettlebell in the rack position and you're doing lunges, so you're a little off balance with the load. It's very good. Again, lunges with the kids or something. They think it's fun. That's a good way of going about it. Other calisthenics, plank is a carry. Bridges can be a carry, depends. But actually, one of the best ways to go about this for calisthenics, sorry, I'm really going around about it, is crawling. Crawling is fantastic. I highly recommend, Animal Flow, like Fitch's Animal Flow programs, GMB's Elements program. I took that years ago, still use it almost every day. It's a fantastic program because when you're crawling, you're literally just carrying your body through space relating to the floor in different ways. So crawling movements are a very good way to incorporate, quote, carries into calisthenics. Fantastic question. Fantastic. Oh, Dave is coming on. Creatine phosphate system takes about 15 minutes to recharge. Yep. Depending on how much you deplete it and everything like that. But yeah, it takes a while. And that's a full charge, sort of thing. It's you can still use it again. One of the things that I like to do is go to the mini incline down in Castle Rock and sprint up the stairs. Well, sort of sprint up the stairs. I don't know anybody who can sprint up those stairs. Everybody gets about halfway and then the legs turn to lead and they just walk up the rest of the way. But it's about 5 minutes coming back down the trail and then I'll go back up again. So that's why I always tell people when it comes to rest periods, go when you can go, kind of thing. Lewis asking, once again, I want to be able to run a marathon, the 40-year-old runner here, but also to have the strength to be able to participate in something like a Spartan race, even in the upper body, climb, carry, etc. Oh yeah, fantastic. So I've done Spartan races. I've never done a marathon. Most I've ever run is about, I think 15 miles or so. But yeah, it's not going to take as much as you think for that sort of thing. If you can do 5 pull-ups and 10 push-ups, you have enough for a Spartan race. It's not nearly as much. So incorporate just a little bit of stuff like that and you'll be good to go. Joe Phil, hey Matt, if one continuous hour of jumping rope, holy hell, burns, let's say 700 calories, would 61 minutes be the same or not? I don't even want to think about jumping rope for an hour long. Holy hell. Good on you if you could do it though. But yeah, exactly. In fact, it's probably more. Because you're ramping up and then you're coming back down a little bit. You've got a little bit of the afterburn effect. You're catching your breath and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what the science is the evidence has shown is that if you take a block of activity and you chop it up, the total amount of energy is still roughly going to be about the same. And it's still going to have roughly the same kind of dent. So feel free to break stuff up. This is why when it comes to burning calories, I'm always telling people, be active throughout the day. Don't limit yourself to a little workout. Imagine if you had a car with a full tank of gas and you would win $1 million if you could get the tank to run on empty, right? You don't say, well, how am I going to have the time to drive this car for like 4 straight hours to run into it? It's like, no, just we drive to the store and we drive over here, and we drive over there, and we do all these little things wherever we can to empty out the tank. It doesn't have to be all at once. In fact, you probably have a lot more chance of burning a lot more if you're active many times instead of regulating that burn to one specific time and place, which we typically do in our gyms as well. Thank you so very, very much for the donation, Bled Terrace. It's much appreciated, my friend. Dimitri, hey Matt, do you think it's true that you don't need formal cardio once you hit over 5,000 steps a day? Oh, this is good. So this is the old the old question that we always get is physical activity a good substitute for strength and conditioning work? The answer for that is depends on what you're after. Because if you're looking for just general calorie burn and stuff like that, activity is going to burn more. You don't get a certain result because you hit a line in the sand of how many steps do you do or how long are you active. Just burning more comes from being more active. But when it comes to conditioning the body, and we're like, I want to get stronger, I want to get healthier, I want to get fitter, you want to make sure that you are training for that thing. Okay, so 5,000 steps a day. Am I going to get really good, strong legs? No, because you're not training to have strong legs. Will you have stronger legs if you're not doing 5,000 steps a day? Absolutely, because again, you create that delta. If you're barely doing anything and you suddenly are like, okay, I'm going to get in shape, and you go from barely walking 1,000 steps to 5,000 steps, is that going to be beneficial? Absolutely. because you create the delta. It's not about 5,000 steps. It's the difference, right? So you will definitely get a benefit, but is it challenging what you want to progress? That's always the question to ask, because you gain that which you challenge. If it's not sufficient to challenge that which you hope to gain, it will not work. Jen's M asking again, hey, Matt, mainly eating dinner and some sort of evening meal. None of them especially. Oh, yes, following up from last time. Thank you very much for letting me know. Yeah, so a lot of times it depends on how you like to take in your food too. Some people are grazers like myself. Some people like to have the way that you have, a good solid meal, so to speak. It can be very, very satisfying. Okay, last couple of questions here. Ushahin asking, hey, Matt, if I wanted to work out every day, would it be a good idea to divide up my total weekly volume by 7, trying to find a way to do some movements every day? That's a good way to go about it. I know where you're coming from with this, because being active more frequently, it just feels good. You stay loose and everything like that. It's definitely a good way. That's exactly what I would do, because a lot of times the research shows that as long as the amount of volume is roughly the same, you get roughly the same result. It really isn't about how you break it up. So if you have roughly the same thing and you just break it up like that, I think you're on the right track. Very smart of you to be doing it in that way. And last from Froton, hey Matt, in your isometric core exercise video, you mentioned you should still be able to breathe, but isn't that only the case with less tension? Or can you still breathe fine with full intensity? Very interested with the core. So yeah, what he's referring to is I have several isometric core exercises, lights up the abs like a Christmas tree. Very, very fun. Check out the isometric playlist here on the RDP channel. And it's, it's a coordination thing. So when we are breathing, the muscle that, of course, is most responsible for our ability to breathe or not breathe is our diaphragm, right? Now, when we are contracting our abs and our core and we're bracing and stuff, that is your abdominals and your rectus abdominis and, or your rectus abdominis, your transversi abdominis, your internal, external obliques, all that sort of thing. They are separate muscles, but a lot of times we don't have the coordination to separate them a little bit. So when we do core exercises, we have that Valsalva maneuver and we end up not breathing, because we're just like, I don't know how to pat my head and rub my belly at the same time. So it turned everything on, including locking up your diaphragm, and, your TVA activates and it just locks everything up. So when we have the coordination, which takes practice and stuff, where abs are engaged and they are really firing, but I still have some degree of relaxation in the diaphragm to control, then you can still breathe. So that you have, one muscle doing one thing and the other muscle does the other. And it's just a coordination thing. It takes some practice, but it can be done with practice. Start off with a lighter contraction with the isometric, and it's probably a little easier to learn that way. All right, my friends, it has been a pleasure as always. Remember, this has been the first episode in my new series for my next upcoming book. It doesn't even have a title yet, but we were addressing the ways on a method-based approach often falls short. And in my next episode next week, I'll be talking about the approach that's going to replace it, which is a hell of a lot more practical and effective. And I'm sure you can already figure out what that's all about and stuff. But I do thank you very much for coming on in. Remember, check out Red Delta Project's Instagram so you get banners that let you know when the next episode is going to be and what it's about and everything like that. And you can also ask me questions there. DM me on the Red Delta Project Instagram channel as well. I will bid you adieu. Thank you very much. Check out the RDP library down below for more resources. And I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.